What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with my hands-on and first impressions video about the Moto G Power. So let's get started. So this is the Moto G Power. Now this device was recently launched. It is the successor to the Moto G7 Power. Now there is actually a different phone called the Moto G8 Power, which is very similar to this device, and I might cover that phone as well. Now they are very similar, so I know that is a bit confusing, but I already have a feeling that this phone is going to be extremely popular this year, especially considering how popular the G7 Power was. And from the looks of it, it looks like Motorola took everything that was great about the Moto G7 Power and made it even better with the G8 Power. Now, before we check out the phone in further detail, let's take a look at everything that is included here in the box. So here is the box itself, and we'll lift the lid here. So we get some paperwork here. So the Moto G Power README. We also get a Moto G Power legal information. And we get a SIM card removal tool. So all the essentials included here. And then beyond that, we get a USB-C cable for charging and data transfer. So very cool. And we get a wall adapter. Now this is a 10-watt USB wall adapter, which is pretty awesome. So not a ton of stuff included in the box, but that's okay because we do get everything that we do need. But here is the actual phone itself. Now I have covered the Moto G Stylus here on the channel, and that phone is very similar to the Moto G Power. They do share a lot of the same specifications, and I will be doing a comparison between those two devices, so stay tuned for that as well. But currently, you can pick up the Moto G Power for $250. Now, I'm sure as time goes on, the price will go down, so certainly take a look at the link in the video description to see the most up-to-date pricing for the phone. What's really awesome about the Moto G Power is that the phone is factory unlocked, and it does work with all 4 major US carriers. So it's going to work with AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile, and various other carriers under those carriers. So I plan on using this phone with Cricket Wireless personally. Now another thing too is that this phone will likely make its way over to different carriers as carrier-specific phones. So you might end up purchasing this at a carrier store. And if you end up doing that, then you likely will be saving quite a bit of money compared to buying this phone factory unlocked. So it really depends on what promotions are available at the moment, but I'd imagine that many people out there will be getting this phone for a fraction of its MSRP. Now the device features a 6.4-inch display. The display itself is IPS LCD, but it does look really good and really clear. It is a 1080p display, which is great. We're getting a PPI of 399. We're getting a 19:9 aspect ratio and an 83% screen-to-body ratio. So a very good looking phone, and of course I do prefer AMOLED instead of LCD, but this LCD display does look really nice. It has really good colors, things look really bright and sharp here, so in general I am a big fan of it. Now this display is going to give you a few of the drawbacks that we saw with the Moto G Stylus, where you do get some discoloring near the corners of the display, which at least when you're on the home screen here, Motorola has added a gradient to kind of hide that discoloring. I'll talk about that more in the full review, but it's not something that I see as a deal breaker. Now up top here, we do have a hole punch for the front-facing camera, and the phone does have a 16-megapixel front-facing camera. Now stay tuned for the full review video for photo and video samples from the device. Now internally, we're getting 64 gigs of storage with the phone, and if that's not enough for you, you can also put a microSD card into it as well. So with the Moto G Stylus, which is a more expensive phone, we're getting 128 gigs, so we are getting half the amount of internal storage with the G Power. Now this phone does not feature wireless charging, but we do have a fingerprint sensor on the back of the phone. So it's a really good fingerprint sensor. It's very fast and responsive, which is great. Now, unfortunately, there is no face unlock with this phone. I'm not sure why. I feel like that's something that Motorola could definitely implement with a software update. I know that another phone that I recently got, the TCL 10L, features the same processor and a pretty similar form factor to this phone, but that phone does have face unlock, so there's really no excuse why Motorola doesn't offer that. Now on the back of the device, we get a triple camera setup. So this camera setup is also a bit different from the Moto G Stylus, but in many ways it's different for the better. Now we get a 16-megapixel front-facing camera, we get an 8-megapixel ultra-wide-angle camera, But what's cool about the ultra wide angle camera is that it supports both photos and videos. And that's great because the Moto G stylus can only take ultra wide angle video. It can't take ultra wide angle photos. So I'm glad that the Moto G Power offers that, but I'm surprised that both don't. And the device features a 2 megapixel macro camera. Now we are getting portrait mode with both the rear and front cameras, which is great. So you can take those nice selfies with blurred backgrounds. Now internally, the phone features 4 gigabytes of RAM and the Qualcomm Snapdragon 665. Now I did run a benchmark test with the phone, and I'll show you the score right now. And with the device, I got an overall score of 173,858. So a pretty decent score there, and definitely a score that I believe will satisfy the majority of people out there. Now it's nowhere near the scores that you'd get with a higher end phone like the S20 Ultra, for example, which scores more in the 500,000 range. But again, most people out there don't need a supercomputer in their pocket. They really just need something that will perform all of the regular tasks, such as going on social media, watching video content, doing video calls, doing phone calls, text messages. All that stuff will work really well with the Moto G Power. Another cool thing too about the Qualcomm Snapdragon 665 is that it is very power efficient. So combining that with the phone's beefy 5,000 milliamp hour internal battery will give you very good battery life. So that is the reason why this phone is part of Motorola's Power series, because it does have such a large battery. Now the phone features 4K video recording with the rear camera and 1080p at the front. So 4K video recording is really cool to see from a phone in this price range, and that is one of the many benefits of having the Snapdragon 665. Now the device features Android 10 as the software on here, and it does feature a very stock experience in the sense that you really don't get too many pre-installed applications beyond the various Google apps. Now I already installed a lot of my favorite apps on the phone so that I can use them as I test out the device. And of course, if you do buy the phone through a carrier, your experience might be a bit different, but at least buying the Moto G Power unlocked will give you a very stock experience here. Now, one downside with the phone is that there is no NFC, which is a bit unfortunate. I really would have liked to have that feature because then I could do mobile payments, but unfortunately that feature is absent. But overall, those are the highlights involving the specifications of the phone. But it's a very good looking phone. I'm a big fan of the front panel here. We do have a little bit of a thicker bottom bezel, but in general, I think it's a great looking phone. It definitely still does look very modern. And I do like having that hole punch for the front facing camera. That is one of my favorite ways of going about doing things, at least in 2020, and at least until we can actually get a front facing camera that can be behind the display itself. So a big thumbs up for that. Now the phone does feature an all plastic build beyond the display, of course. Taking a look at the left side of the device, we have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. Then on the right of the phone, we have the power button and volume button. Then on the top, we have the noise canceling microphone. Then on the bottom, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack. We have the USB-C port for charging and data transfer. We have the microphone and we have the speaker. Then on the back of the phone, we have the camera module and we have the fingerprint sensor. So overall, a pretty glossy back on this phone, and it does pick up quite a few fingerprints. So you might want to consider pairing this phone up with a case. But in general, I think it's a very good looking, definitely a practical minded phone. So if you're looking for a device that's not too expensive, that gives you very good battery life, and also gives you very decent performance, then I think you definitely are going to want to consider the Moto G Power. Now, of course, I'm going to have to use this phone quite a bit more before I can get back to you with my full review about it, but I am very optimistic so far, and it looks like a great option here from the company. But I hope you enjoyed this hands-on and first impressions video about the Moto G Power. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure to also check out my other videos on the channel, not only about this phone, but many of the other phones too that I've covered recently. And if you have any questions or specific requests, let me know in the comments section below. But I will see you in the next video.